So when it comes to things not getting done that need to get done, my wife Deb recites a favorite line of hers. It's not a matter of will, it's a matter of won't. I like that line. I find myself repeating it often. It's easy for Christians to point fingers at the culture and blame the world for all of the problems plaguing the church. But as that old cliche states, when we point fingers at someone else, there are three more, 1, 2, 3, pointing back at us. That said, churchgoers must take responsibility for our share of the situation. I mean, if we neither share our faith nor invite others to church, we can't wring our hands in, surprised disappointment as worship attendance and finances decline. We complain about not knowing persons at church, but fail to involve ourselves in classes and groups that help us get to know one another better. We don't commit to spiritual disciplines that build our relationship with God and one another, and then we wonder why our faith isn't meaningfully growing and why Christians are having less positive impact on our society. That's why I'm preaching these spiritual disciplines this Lent. We won't give, as you heard Pat and Chuck talk about, we won't give the biblical standard of the tithe, but then we complain when churches ask for money. Some even close their doors. For years, many churches cloistered our millennial children in the church nursery when they were infants, and then as they got into their elementary and even high school years, we put them in Sunday school, a Sunday school which was deliberately held during worship time. So mom and dad were in church, children were in Sunday school, never in church. Those actions effectively excluded millennials from worship for their most formative years. And then we wonder why the millennials don't come to church. What's wrong with them? In Africa, and I checked this out with Jackie this week, children from birth on are present for all or part of the worship service. Their congregations are the fastest growing in the world. No wonder. Train up a child in the way he or she should go. Each of these illustrations, it's not a matter of will, it's a matter of won't. Dying mainstream Protestants won't do what's needed. Even what we promised to do in our baptism, confirmation, membership, and renewal vows where we pledged our prayers, presence, gifts, service, and witness. We promised to God with one another as witnesses. In the Bible, God gives us an instruction manual for life and an instruction manual for the church. When we disregard it, problems occur in life and in the church. I've never figured out why baptized, lifelong members of a church do not ardently imitate Jesus and engage in the life activities to which he called his disciples. I mean, we don't have to do it all at once, but are we even trying over the course of our life to engage spiritual disciplines in order to attain that goal of loving like Jesus loved? So many preachers are up there doing this. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't do the other thing. But we don't know what we can do. The spiritual disciplines are what we can do. It's what the Christian life looks like. We know what the unchristian life looks like. We hear that enough. This is what the Christian life looks like. What are we doing if not following Jesus' example? Because if we, the people who voluntarily give our lives to the holy, loving reign of Christ, if we don't follow through on our faith, what hope is there for the rest of the world? Have we, mainline American Protestants, have we become the Pharisees that Jesus railed about? Are we what John Wesley fretted over? Leaders and members of an organization having the form of religion without the vitality and the fruits of faith. Today's topic is a spiritual discipline. And it's a tougher one. People don't even think of it as a spiritual discipline. It's tithing. And it is related to the spiritual discipline of simplicity, which I preached 3 weeks ago. We simply forgot simplicity. Same goes for tithing. Now, the first book of the Bible, and when people decide to read the Bible, they often say, I'm going to start right in the beginning with the book of Genesis. So I know most people have read this. By the way, I suggest when people want to read the Bible, they start with the Gospels. They start with Jesus. Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, it doesn't matter, but start with Jesus. Because after Genesis, which is a really exciting book, and so is Exodus, and then Numbers, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and then people give up. If he had started with the Gospels. Anyway, I'm off topic. The first book of the Bible, Genesis, contains the 2 reasons to tithe. The first reason comes from Father Abraham in Genesis 14. What happens is that he successfully rescues his nephew Lot from the armies of 4 kings which kidnapped the younger man. And so in celebration of that astonishing success and blessing, Abram gives God 1/10 a tithe of everything he has. Not only his income, but his total assets. And this man was a wealthy Arab sheik. That's what we would call him today. 1/10, everything he had. Abraham doesn't just say he's thankful to God. He puts his money where his mouth is. A year and a half ago, some of you may remember, if you were here, I hope all of you remember, that I took an anonymous poll about our blessings. 79% of us reported being very blessed. Another 21% were blessed. No one, 0, ranked themselves as not blessed, which means that 100% of us considered ourselves either blessed or very blessed, which was the highest of any congregation I served in 40 years of ministry. Wow. Are those blessings reflected in our giving? Are you giving 1/10 as Abram modeled? Or, if not, have you sincerely, since that time, worked toward that 10% goal by moving up, say, 1 or 2 percentage points of income in your giving? Our Deuteronomy lesson that Melinda read says this: when you have eaten your fill and have built fine houses and live in them, in other words, got full tummies and nice homes to live in, and when your herds and flocks, I don't think any of you are shepherds or ranchers, but let's translate herds and flocks into general blessings and stocks, pensions, Social Security. I'll start from the beginning again. When you have eaten your fill and have built fine houses and live in them, and when your herds and flocks have multiplied, then do not exalt yourself, forgetting the Lord your God. Do not arrogantly say with self-pride, my power and the might of my own hand have gotten me this wealth. But remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you power to get wealth. That's the number one reason to tithe. Blessing. And as you said, we're blessed. But Genesis also provides us with a second reason to tithe. And this time it's Abram's grandson, Jacob, in that famous Jacob's Ladder story from Genesis 28. We just sung the famous tune, right? Jacob encounters God in a dream. A spiritual encounter that forever changes him. He expresses his life-altering transformation by tithing. Tithing is a sign of his faith. So, to recap, very simply, there are only 2 reasons to tithe. Blessing, as Abraham modeled, and a transforming spiritual experience with or from the divine, as Jacob modeled. But notice this, and you won't hear pastors tell you this, but I want you to notice, tithing is not mandatory. There is no command that says, thou shalt tithe. How interesting. Because tithing, as you've heard in Genesis, tithing is a statement of faith. A powerful statement of faith. I mean, we've already admitted that we're blessed. And some of us have some great testimonies about how Christ changed our lives, which is to then say that all of us fit either one or both of the reasons to tithe. So again, I ask, does your giving reflect your faith and or your blessings? Lots of churches, lots of pastors avoid talking about tithing. It's an uncomfortable subject. Most congregations don't want to hear about tithing. And most pastors don't want to preach what their persons don't want to hear. Or maybe the pastors themselves aren't tithers. Instead of tithing, what do? We engage fundraising activities, which are largely supported by the congregation alone. Things like dinners and strawberry festivals and what have you. For those community folks who do come, I gotta ask, why are we expecting them to pay our utility bills? Why are we expecting them to purchase Bibles and Sunday school curriculum? Why are we expecting them to pay church staff's salary. Or consider this. Why pay $10 for a spaghetti dinner that costs $8 and lots of time and energy and people to put on and turns only a $2 profit? I mean, it just doesn't make economic sense. It's easier to place that $2 in the offering plate and save all the time and effort, right? Because once churches get in that habit of funding ministry with fundraisers, boy, it becomes this never-ending treadmill of events on which we become increasingly dependent. Plus, isn't it a turnoff when we're picking your pocket with yet another fundraiser? It may eventually contribute to lower giving, lower attendance, lower participation. Why is that? Well, if I'm working at spaghetti dinner and paying for that for my whole family, I'm not going to put that in the offering plate on Sunday. Can't afford it. And all these fundraisers, my gosh, I work 5 days a week. I have a second job. Saturday's my only break, and now I'm at church. But you know what? I was so long at church cooking and cleaning up and putting things away that I'll just not come on Sunday. Fundraising. In each of the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Jesus did not want his Father's house to be a house of business and trade. He wanted it to be a house of prayer and faith as it was intended to be. And so as Passover approached, we would call it Holy Week, Jesus overturned the tables of those money changers in the temple. No wonder they crucified him a few days later, right? Because tithing overturns church fundraisers and the money changers in the temple. And so I got to ask, if we want a fundraiser, why not tithe? Tithing is God's fundraiser. It's biblical. I mean, churches have tried everything else, which we've demonstrated doesn't work. That's why we keep doing them. Why not go with God's plan? The one plan we haven't tried. Let's get on board with the tithe, the spiritual discipline of tithing. And so, my friends, as with each of the spiritual disciplines that I've asked you to commit to, I'm asking you to tithe, to make that commitment to God. Not because it's a command, not to meet the budget, not because I said so, but because it's a reflection of your blessing and your relationship with God. As I've said, it's a powerful statement of faith. Giving back 10% of what God's already given us truly expresses trust in God. I mean, God gives us all we need, so certainly God can be trusted to care for us. We know that. And again, as I said before, like all matters of trust, you may need to take some small steps to get there of, say, 1 or 2% a year. And that's fine. Because it's what's in your heart, and that's what God's looking at, and that's what God knows, what's in your heart. Not just a magic number. What's in your heart? Bottom line, We start life with nothing. 0%. And we very quickly get up to speed and get 100%. We're sitting here with 100%. And then we're asked to return 10% of those blessings. Any bookmaker would take those odds, those 10-to-1 odds, to Las Vegas or Atlantic City, don't you know? Or try it another way, reframe it. Imagine only paying 10% for everything at Kohl's that they're selling. Or 10% for everything at the Giant that you need to eat. Or 10% at Kelly's when you go out to eat for breakfast or lunch. Only paying 10%. It's a no-brainer. The point is, we're still ahead. We're richer than when we started with nothing. Focus on the 90% you have, not the 10% you give. It's a bargain. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.